Welcome back to the next installment of political responses to Hellenism and Roman rule.
Yeah.
You remember last video, we did the positive responses, Sadducees, the Herodians, and then the family of Herod itself.
Yep.
Where are we going to start today?
We're going to go towards the more negative responses to Hellenism. And there's 3 different groups over here. And the first one we're going to talk about is the Pharisees. And I think this is going to be really helpful because these two get mixed up a whole lot.
A whole lot. Most of the believers that I know who haven't done a ton of study or don't understand well, would pretty much think that these are synonymous. Mm-hmm. Pharisees and Sadducees, they're just kind of, what we would understand as, they're just kind of like the religious leaders. And if we don't have a good understanding of synagogue and temple, and that's mixed together, then it's easy to see how we could kind of come to that spot. So who are the Pharisees or the Parashim?
So the Pharisees they have gone to more of a negative response to Hellenism. They reject it totally, and they want to go in and be of the word, right? But they are among the people still. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense?
It makes sense. The Pharisees as a group are not in power. Mm. They're not they're not like the leading political group. They're essentially, they are most common, but they're not actually holding power other than influence.
Yeah.
Pharisees, primarily in, our culture, people think of Pharisees are just the rule followers. That's all they do. That's all they care about. Yeah. Just following the rules. It's all about legalism. It's vapid spirituality. They don't care about any of that, just so long as you follow the rules. Mm-hmm. So much so that actually in our culture, what we've done is we've gotten a shift away from obedience as being Pharisaical. And so when somebody is like practicing obedience for righteousness' sake, or striving for holiness, or leaning in to more obedience with the Lord, some people will look down on that and say, oh, you're just being a Pharisee. Mm-hmm. Stop being such a Pharisee. And it's like, no, that's following rules is good. Yeah. Order is good. Obedience is good. These are not bad things. Right. And it's an oversimplification and a caricaturizing of Pharisees that just doesn't fit them well historically.
Well, and if we think back to our conversation with synagogue and temple, like they reordered everything around the text because they saw what not being with the text did in the lives all before and into the exile.
Exactly. And so that's the piece that I think is so critical when we think about the Pharisees. Imagine if not you and not your grandparents, somebody in your family remembers the exile. Somebody remembers Babylon coming in, violently destroying, sticking metal hooks, rings in the king's noses and putting people's eyes out, burning down villages, children being slaughtered, wives and daughters being raped, the tragedy that happens. And as they sat in exile, the prophets wrote Samuel and Kings and then Chronicles, all written from the position of exile, looking backwards, asking the question, how did we get here? And that's what was so good for us as a church, as we read Torah first, then to read the Chronicles, Kings, and the prophets backwards. We could see the disobedience to Torah. That's exactly what they did when they saw it. They said, oh man, we drifted. Mm-hmm. We got away from the covenant. We broke the covenant. We didn't even realize we were doing it, but we were unfaithful to the covenant. Yeah. They're like, we want to be a people who are faithful to the covenant, because when we're unfaithful to the covenant, curses. When we're faithful to the covenant, blessing. Right. And so they weren't like, we're just about following the rules. They're like, no, the Lord is going to come back. He's going to restore all of this. And the people that he's going to restore it to will be a people that are faithful to the covenant, not a people who are unfaithful to the
Yes.
covenant, which is the same that we're living in now. Jesus is coming back not to a church that doesn't resemble him, but to a church that does resemble him. That's one of the reasons we lean into Christ's likeness. Who's he going to come back and find?
Yeah. But the issue with the Pharisees is their extreme concern for obedience and gave them very little compassion
Right.
for the sinners, basically, because the sinners are the reason God has not come back and restored everything.
Right. Yep. So the Pharisees, not in power, but are in influence. They are everywhere, but primarily in the north, in the Galilee, in 3 cities: Capernaum, Bethsaida, and there's a third one. It'll come to me in a minute. But and this is where Jesus does the most of his ministry, is in the north, in the region of the Galilee. And so, yeah, I think that's all I have on the Pharisees.
I think it's helpful to recognize that these are the people that Jesus worked the most with.
Yep.
In these different groups. These are the ones he interacted with most.
Yep.
And a lot of times we assign like the Pharisees are the reasons that Jesus was crucified, but that's not true. That's not true.
What as we're reading in the Gospels, pay attention. Jesus spends 3 years doing work within and among the Pharisees. I would say, I don't think it's a stretch. He was operating as a Pharisee. Right. He was in synagogue. He was consistently with them. He was correcting. He was debating text with them. He said, oh, well, you have heard it said, but I say, you have heard it said, but this is engaging in Pharisaical debate. 3 years. And they tried to run him off the cliff a couple times. And they weren't like, super kind. 1 week with the Sadducees and they killed him. Jesus does not interact with the Sadducees in the Gospels except when he's at the temple. That's the Pharisees. And so while there was struggle between them, it seemed to me more correcting than straight out rejection. Yeah. If you were to look theologically, Jesus aligned 100% with this group.
Yep. He just had the compassion.
Right. Yep. Theologically, not practically. So their response to Roman rule and to Hellenism is to resist it. It is quiet, objection. It's quiet objection. Yeah. We remain a people of the text. We remain a people of a people of piety. We remain in opposition to Rome.
Peaceful resistance.
Peaceful resistance, thank you. But the way that we remain in opposition to Rome is through peaceful resistance. Yeah. We just focus on obeying Torah. We just focus on being the best Hebrews that we can be, and God will deal with the Romans. Yeah. God will take care of this Roman situation. We don't need to intervene. We don't need to concern ourselves with the matters of it. They'll go their way. We'll go ours. Don't pay attention to them. Just look down and be a student of the text. So you're in the world, but you're ignoring the world.
Okay.
Who else we got over there that was negative?
Zealots.
Oh, yeah. Full of zeal.
Full of zeal. I mean, the Zealots are similar to the Pharisees in that they're rejecting Hellenism, but it's not peacefully.
No.
So they had this extreme religious zeal to follow the text, to be about the text, but the result was we will fight for it.
Exactly. So the Zealots were like by sword, and this is the Sicarii, and where, of course, some scholars, I was taught, the Sicarii take their name after the curved dagger that they carry with them. And this is Judas Iscariot was a zealot of the Sicarii in the north, and so also Simon the Zealot, so that 2 of Jesus' disciples were zealots. And so their response to Roman rule was, yes, we're going to be people of the text. Yes, we're going to be people of obedience, but we will not turn a blind eye to Rome. Instead, we will fight it head on. And so by violence and by killing them if absolutely necessary, but we will not let them come and take our freedoms and our liberties away.
Yeah.
We will fight them at every turn.
Yep. Yeah. I don't have much else on the Zealots.
No, I get the Zealots. I mean, it makes a lot of sense. We have a lot of zealot thinking in, my dad used to say, better to be tried by 12 than carried by 6. Like this idea of we will fight and use lethal force if absolutely necessary, so that our side wins, so that we come out on top, and just completely miss the message of the kingdom.
Yeah.
The other group is the Essenes. So the Essenes as a people group similarly reject Hellenism, reject Roman rule. We're going to be people of the word. We're going to study it. We're going to write it. We're going to purify ourselves. And they go off into Qumran, a community in the desert, and just focus on the text. They're actually primarily priests. The historical record places most of the Essenes as priests. So it almost appears as though this is a response to the Sadducees that kind of parallels this negative side. And so these are priests and Levites who are still operating in the temple at times and who are still operating in villages doing their priestly duties. But as a community, they go off into Qumran to study and to completely remove themselves from the world. So their response is similar. We're going to be people of the word. We're going to resist Roman rule, but the way that we're going to do it is we're just going to get the heck out of here. We're going to remove ourselves and start our own little holy community away
like
from
monks.
everything. Kind of like monks. So the 4th century, the monastic movement in the 4th century, most would say that saved Christianity. When Christianity became the world religion of Rome, and most people think this is awesome. The church and state, they're in bed together. This is going to be great for everybody. Nearly destroyed the faith. It was only the monks who went off into the desert to become people of the word again and to completely remove themselves from the debacle of the church and state intermingled together. That's what saved the faith in the 4th century. So the Essenes were the precursors to that. They're where we get the Dead Sea Scrolls. And so the Dead Sea Scrolls were a set of manuscripts of the Bible, essentially. And it's how we know a lot of historical accuracy. Those were found, I think, in the 70s or something.
Yeah.
That was Essene work.
And it was incredibly accurate.
Or incredibly. There's a four-person, for the Dead Sea Scrolls, incredibly accurate. It was what really just zeroed in a lot of the translation. Up until that point, they're like, well, can we really trust it? It's been, translated and retranslated, and we got fragments. And then we find the Dead Sea Scrolls, and they were able to translate. They're like, no, actually, a remarkable job has been done by translators. It's remarkably accurate. It's remarkably complete.
Yep. Shows their devotion.
Yeah. Fun fact, the Dead Sea Scrolls do not contain the Book of Esther.
How about that?
Yeah, how about that?
Are there any famous
Yes.
scenes?
We believe the way that the word describes Zechariah and Elizabeth as being righteous, which would not be a way that you would describe a Sadducee, but being a priest and doing his priestly duty in the temple. Most scholars would believe that Zechariah is an Essene, which would make John the Baptist an Essene also, or having an Essene leaning and bent, which would make a lot of sense why his cousin Jesus, when he comes on the scene, would have studied underneath them and kind of where he would have gotten a lot of his chutzpah to have a willingness to challenge what common understanding of the text would be.
Yep.
I think the only other thing that we can touch on right now is the scribes and the teachers of the law. And so they're mentioned in there. Think of these as jobs. Think of them like lawyers or like copyrights. And so the scribes, there were Essenes had scribes, Pharisees had scribes, Sadducees had scribes. Everybody had scribes. Scribe was a 4-person job in the Essene world. One person would read the word, another person would look over his shoulder to be sure that what he read was correct. They would tell one person who wrote the word, and another person would look over his shoulder to be sure that what he wrote was correct. Yeah. That was the level of detail that the Essenes put into reading and writing Torah and all of the prophets, the entire Tanakh. And so that's what the job of the scribe does. The scribe reads and writes, and so copies the law. And then the teachers of the law are, again, like lawyers, kind of. It's kind of like a job. So they read and interpret Torah. It says this, it means this. In this application, it means to do that. Prime example of this is in the Old Testament, in Deuteronomy, it says, don't muzzle an ox while he's treading out grain. The Apostle Paul uses this and says, this is why you should pay the church workers, because the word says don't muzzle an ox when he's treading out grain. This would be the work of the teacher of the law. The teacher of the law would say, well, see, in Deuteronomy, we had this law to not muzzle the ox while treading out grain. Okay. The principle behind that is actually that things should be paid or compensated for the work that it is that they're doing. And now you can take this and apply this to you should be paying your church workers. So Paul was using the work of like a teacher of the law, very similar kind of a thing. Now they would have a leaning in any one of these political things because the scribes and the teachers of the law were jobs. They were not political alliances. So your political alliance would determine kind of where you would sit. Okay. And as with anything, man, this is a spectrum. And so you could have primarily, for most of the people, 90% of average Judeans are going to have some Pharisaical leanings. They're going to have some, probably some Sadducee temperaments, and they know in a scene, and it's not a bad thing. And so, as you look at all of this, it really kind of separates what was probably much more merged together. Yeah, those are going to be the groups that you're going to interact with in the Scripture, especially as we get into the Gospels.
We've got one more.
We do got one more. You want to do it right now, or you want to cut another video?
Yeah, let's cut.
Cool.
Shorter one, and then maybe we could just stick it on to the beginning or end of one of these ones.
We'll be right back.